Well,
Yeah.
let's move on to the next part of what I really want to hear you talk about is this connection between breast cancer and bras. And I think that that's really, really important. We flashed that book cover up there for just a minute, Dress to Kill, and we were talking before we went
Yeah, let's
live
have that up
that
again. I think I
I
went a
read
little
that.
out of order before.
I read the first version of that book in 1995. I didn't know that there was a newer, updated version that came out in 2018. So let's talk about that a bit. Because when I read that book, the 1995 version, I thought it was really compelling, and it just got slammed at the Kingdom Come. And now you say this updated version is much more compelling. Tell us about that.
Well, yes, because it covers more research, and there were a number of studies that were done subsequently, mostly out of the country, that back up their research. And the Singers, this book was written by Sidney Ross Singer and his wife Soma Grismeyer, and they say that the link between bras and breast cancer is stronger than the link between smoking and lung cancer.
Oh my goodness,
Wow.
that's
And
very strong.
they found, according to their research, if you were bra free, your rate of cancer, if you never wore a bra, the rate of cancer for women was more or less the same as the rate of cancer for men. I mean, how many men do you know with breast cancer? I hardly know any, but I know tons of women with breast cancer. So it's an amazing
Yeah,
statistic.
and I remember the story at the beginning of that book that his wife had just been diagnosed with cancer, and they were in Fiji or someplace
That's
like
right.
that in Fiji, and they were in a like a would be equivalent of an Airbnb today, and they were in a little hut, and she had washed out her bra and was hanging it out to dry, and the native woman said, "What's that?" And they was like, we would never put that on our chest and our breast. And it got her husband thinking, well, I wonder what that's all about. And that was sort of the beginning of the research. And when they looked at women all over the world, like island women, African women, Asian women who didn't wear the Western the Western corsets and the Western bras, particularly the underwires, the difference in breast cancer rates was just staggering. Talk a little bit about the problems with the underwires. Why does that make it even worse?
Well, in general, what the Singers say is that the bras constrict lymph flow.
Right.
And where do toxins collect in the body? Generally in the fatty tissue. So here, we women have plenty of fatty tissue in our breasts. So that's where toxins, waste products can collect. And normally, the lymphatic system would flush it out. But if you're constricting it with a bra, the tighter it is, if you've got tight underwire, that can make it impossible for those toxins and waste products to flush out. And so you get pain, cysts, and potential of tumors. But there's an additional problem with the underwire. And I have a very bizarre anecdote to tell you about that, because the underwire does in fact also, as well as constricting the tissue, it picks up dirty electricity and EMF signals. And I had a very clear picture of what that was all about when my youngest son was in primary school or middle school. He'd just been given this orthodontic headgear to wear at night. First night wearing that in his bedroom. And he comes in the morning and he's terrified. He says he couldn't sleep. He's convinced there's a monster in the closet. And he had bad dreams. He was just terrified. Something was up. And he said, Mom, you've got to sort it out. There's something in the closet. And we happened to have an EMF meter. And I was, he took it around his room, and I was expecting to find one of these weird globes of EMF activity in the middle of the ceiling. No, his closet was clear. But what we did find, right by his bed, there was a straight line of strong EMF straight by his bed. And it only came on when his brother in the next room had his computer on.
Oh my
So
goodness.
there was some dirty electricity that was coming through in the ceiling, in that wire in the ceiling by his bed. And when he was asleep, it was picked up by this wire headgear. The wire headgear acted as a receiver for this, and his brain interpreted this disturbance as a monster in his closet. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bizarre story, but it illustrates very clearly that you can have incredible effects from EMF and dirty electricity. So if it was doing it for the headgear around his jaw, imagine what it would do if it's underneath your breasts all through the day. You've got this metal wire picking up any dirty electricity, any EMF that you're walking through. So yes, I would say ditch the underwire. I no longer wear a bra. I mean, I never threw away my bra or burned my bra in the 60s or 70s. I was a pretty straight-laced young lady at that point. But now I don't wear a bra. I never wear it.
What I would say to most listeners about this is, for sure, don't wear one when you don't have to. Don't
Right.
wear it to bed. Don't wear it around the house. Don't wear it in your pajamas. You know, maybe wear it if you have to go out to a business, if you have to go to work, particularly if you have sizable breasts. And wear it when you're going out into a public setting. Wear it when you're going to go out someplace. But other than that, when you don't have to have one on, just don't, because of everything that you just said, CJ, about the lymphatics and the drainage and the moving around. Because think about it, every time you bend over to pick something up off the floor, tie your shoes, I mean, you're moving that breast tissue around so that you can get that stimulation to change the lymphatics. But when you've got them like glued down to your chest, I don't know the history to this, maybe you do, but I'm quite certain a man must have made one of those. Because
Yeah, I think that's true. And then they were very different in the in the
Victorian ways,
1950s.
or even
You
before
know?
Victorian days, right?
Yeah. But I came across even yet another problem with bras that I had never heard of before. I happened to meet a lady who was a retired obstetric nurse, and also she'd done nurse social work, and she was a certified lactation consultant. And she'd worked, say, from the 1980s through to the early 2000s. And she had found a hugely increased amount of problems that women were having with breastfeeding, so that they were having inverted nipples from training. And she reckoned it was from the training bras that you never used to have before, say, the 60s or so. We didn't have training bras. And the older nurses that this lady worked with had not seen it. And they reckoned that the Marilyn Monroe style pointy bras were actually better in terms of protecting the nipples because they didn't push the nipples in. But if you think about it, if you're wearing something all the time that's flattening out your nipples, then they're going to, particularly when you're developing and growing, so the training bras do that, you are maybe preventing your nipples from growing out properly. And if you want to breastfeed, that can be a problem.